welcome to this session today. Before we start this session, we just want to give you a small demo. Probably I'll hand it over to Prakash.
Right. Guys, this is a live demo, so let's see, hope it works.
Everybody pray.
Alexa, ask Callow about the conference.
I'm not sure.
Alexa, ask Callow about the conference.
Knock, knock.
All right. I'll give last try.
I will be more than happy to tell.
Alexa, stop.
Goodbye.
Alexa, ask Callow about the conference.
Knock, knock.
Alexa, stop.
Alexa,
Bye.
just don't talk.
Okay, that was a great start. The topic today is all about the rise of conversational AI and humanizing it. It sounds very interesting, right? We are trying to make computers human. We have already seen a lot of movies where we actually talk to the computers, and then it's evolved over there from movies to the actual things. We have here panelists who would be covering all these topics on how the adoption, the application, what technologies are involved to humanizing it, and also see what's the harmful effects of it. So just to give you a little genesis about it. So when we started the whole concept of computer technology, it was more like clicking and typing. And from past few decades, we saw the mobile technology coming in, and we had the smartphones where the touch technology became very evident. But that didn't end. And in the last 2 years, when Alexa came into the market, we started seeing that we can also start talking to the computers. But that would be the game changer, where we are trying to tell not the humans to learn the technology, but the computers to learn the technology. So this is where we are trying to end towards, and we wanted to really cover this topic in a very broad sense. For me, I wanted to start with a few of our panelists, starting with Heena and Prakash, to give us some insights on how the current technology of the conversational AI, which is it's more like a home-based solution or a personalized solution, and how the enterprises are going to look at and pick it up on their front.
Hello. Am I audible? Yeah. All right. So I'm Prakash from Target, and the way we see conversational AI evolving is pretty much changing the landscape of commerce. And that's why we start calling it as a conversational commerce, because it's a new way to interact. For like a company like Target, or for any retailer for that matter, or for any company for that matter, it's a new way for you to interact and socialize with your customers, for the brands to work with their customers, and even for marketing and for everybody, right? So it's about making that connection with your customers anywhere, anytime. And few of the examples that we always talk about is commerce, or let's say shopping, is changing dramatically, right? We barely go to stores nowadays. We all shop online, we know that. But I think what we are also looking at a vision where people will shop from, let's say, while driving to the office through a voice mechanism, or people may be texting and shopping, or if you are on Snapchat or let's say WhatsApp, you may be shopping, you may be buying something, or you may be looking at something. So I think conversational AI, for that matter, and then conversational commerce, which is an application of conversational AI for retailer and for that matter, most of the industries, is going to dramatically change in the next couple of years how the brands and then the retailers and then the companies interact. Just to give a perspective on the market, today it's less than $5 billion market, but the analysis from big 4 or 5 analysts says that by 2025, this will be more than $100 billion market. So it is rising exponentially, and this is one of the big next, almost like saying next big decade in internet.
So I'm Heena Raval, and I work for CA Technologies. I run the data sciences team for CA at Hyderabad. Um, when we talk about the enterprise market, right, and when we are talking about the application of conversational AI, we serve some of the biggest banks and some of the biggest insurance companies, right? We serve in the market where all these enterprises are going through their digital transformation journey. Now, where we have seen the success with conversational AI, banking as a sector is in the forefront. There is a ton of investment that banks are making in conversational AI. And more than the sector, it is really the functions like customer service, customer support, knowledge management, and these functions are getting really modernized with conversational AI. If you've seen Abe, which is a digital assistant for financial planning, it works with Udly platform, aggregation APIs, and it provides personalized services to the customers because it looks at all your accounts, your taxes, your SMS data, and whatnot, right? So I see banking as one sector where there's a lot of good success, and a lot of it is to do with wherever the conversational AI is actually interfacing directly with the end users, with the consumers, right? Some interesting use cases in enterprise are also related to conversational business intelligence. So, for instance, you are a portfolio leader and you're like, hey, Microsoft Cortana, give me health of my business. And so here comes the Power BI drill down card with information about how your different businesses or business units are doing. And you can go and then now start looking at where I should focus. Those are some interesting cases in conversational AI in the enterprise space. Knowledge discovery, as we knew in the past, has changed quite a bit. We're constantly hiring new folks in the system, and so a lot of internal implementation of conversational AI in big corporations is related to discovering knowledge, the training and development plans, getting access to the knowledge bases which are really disparate by going into this whole conversational Q&A type experience for employees. So that has been some of the use cases that I've seen where conversational AI has done good progress.
Good inputs. So we are talking really about the conversational AI. So we have to have the conversation with the bot. So currently we see that Alexa does a wonderful job where you ask a question, it's able to say what's the weather outside, or I want to book a Uber or any of these things. But I'm here to ask you guys whether it can do much more than that. Can I have a 20 minutes conversation with Alexa? Is that a possibility? Or do you see there's business applications that requires to that level of conversations, multi-level task? Probably if I say I wanted to go, probably Prakash flew to, from Hyderabad, Prashant flew from Hyderabad to Bangalore. It involves a lot of logistics, right? You have to book an Uber, you have to book air tickets, you have to book the hotel, you have to figure out how you can transit between the systems. Can I do that kind of a long conversations with this thing? So this involves both application and the technology behind this. I'll start with Rajendra.
Yeah. So the question is, can actually a chatbot can converse for a long duration of time? It is possible, but then we are in a stage where most of the conversation that is supposed to happen has to be pre-planned. Right? So it is more like we actually has to go through what are the sequence of, let us say, the dialogues that actually probably we need to plan, and we need to kind of put them into program. What I at least envision is that going forward, a fully conversational AI that actually kind of reason itself and keep talking on its own based on, let us say, the context or the information that has evolved during the session, I think we are quite far off. But some of the key, let us say, the traits that actually we see, for example, finding the right context, predicting what is the intent of, let us say, user to kind of, generate a new dialogue. I think what we are seeing is that the technology are being developed, and are being put into place. And yeah, definitely I would see that such kind of long conversations will actually be, the frontiers of the conversational AI, and we are going to see many interesting applications based on that.
So I'll just add on to that. So interesting, like you said, right? Is it possible? Yes, it is possible. But is it easy? No, it's not. The example I want to bring up here is, so Microsoft, of course, we have our AI platform and the bot framework and all that stuff. But I don't know if you're aware, we have a social chat bot that's out in like 3-4 countries right now. We started with China. It's called Xiaowais. It's like called Cortana's little sister sort of a thing. And it's on WeChat. And it's gone completely viral. So I think there are about 300 million users who chat with Xiaowais. And there's an avatar of Xiaowais in India, which we call as Ru, R-U-U-H. You can find her on Facebook Messenger. So the idea here is actually what we talked about, the humanizing part. So Ru doesn't do anything useful. She doesn't book your tickets or she doesn't file your expense report. She's a friend to you. That's the personality she has. And you chat with her as you would chat with your friend. And I strongly encourage, just check out Ru and talk to her on Facebook Messenger. I guarantee you'll be surprised with how uncanny she is, how much of context she understands, and how much of a length of conversation she can do. So we had we monitor logs, right, of how people interact with Ru. There's one chap who actually chatted with Ru 7 hours non-stop. I mean, you can argue he had nothing better to do, but he actually did that. So, so now coming to how did we do this? Let me tell you, it's, like I said, it's not easy. Microsoft has spent millions of dollars on making this technology work. And I will be frank in saying a lot of this technology is art. There's little bit of neural nets that understand the context and respond, language generation stuff. But there's an army of editors who actually write content for Ru. And that's what her personality is, and that's how she's able to talk to you in her way, right? So it's non-trivial. And maybe someday we'll have the Terminator equivalent of Skynet who takes over the world, but I think, yeah, we are a little bit up from that right now.
So I'll take it from there because it's interesting you talk about Ru. How many of you heard about Alexa Prize? Okay, so it was a contest Amazon launched. The contest was that you'll get $1 million if you're able to converse with Alexa for 20 minutes, and the conversation should be engaging and coherent, right? And I'm sure if Ru was part of it, it would have probably won the... but we're talking about averages here. On average, the conversation should be of 20 minutes, right? So nobody won the contest, right? As in nobody was able to sustain a 20-minute on average conversation, right? But what do you guys think would have, was the winner, whoever the top was, how many minutes could that sustain? Any guesses?
7 minutes.
Yeah, it's actually 11 minutes, 22 seconds. So I think from the point of view of, at a mass, we are solving the problem of what I call task-based chatbots, where I have a task in mind, it's a constrained environment, and then you kind of take a step at a time and you fulfill the task, which is pretty much, I would say, a glorified version of a IVRS system. It's a much more intelligent version of IVRS system, but which is very effective. I think that is solved, right? When we talk about conversations, I think, especially given this conference about conversational AI, let me talk about the AI front, right? And I'm happy that you touched about the neural net as part of it. So let me go back to Alexa Price, right? The top 3 teams, right? They use different kind of technologies. And when we see the top team was almost a mix of 50% machine learning and 50% rule-based systems, right? The second team was almost all rule-based system. And for rule-based system, you need to understand a lot of context, a lot of, rules, and as I say, a bunch of editors, an army of people to work with it. The third team was interesting. It tried to solve this problem, the team which came third, using machine learning, right? And it's interesting, initially they tried to take a lot of data from online, from Reddit, and it turned out for every question, it's just giving a swear word out. So they kind of fixed that problem, and over time, it was able to solve it. So I think we are at a cusp right now, and where for certain smaller tasks, we are able to solve it very effectively. For the longer ones, it's in the research domain, and I don't think it's very long that we would see at least a few minutes of when you get back home, you just want to have a small chit-chat kind of a conversation, and something will come out of Alexa that can just make you, talk a little bit and, start your evening from there on.
So can I add a minute on this? Just to set the context about what is a conversation in the context of conversational AI. And the way we look at it is like your voice versus text are a channel. Like whether you converse using text or you converse using voice, whether it's through Snapchat, WhatsApp, let's say Facebook, Messenger, or whether it's Alexa, Yahoo, Google Home, or any one of these voice-based channels. They are like channels, right? And then behind the scene is where your network comes in, and all the technology comes in. From an industry perspective, the way you see this is, and which is very interesting, is that most of the retailers, and I'm also assuming that most of the other industries are working with Google. For example, Target worked with Google and launched shopping on Google Home. Walmart did the same. Home Depot, PetSmart, you can like name many retailers in US. Versus many brands, like brands conscious and brand themselves are working with Amazon and putting their brand on Alexa. So there is almost like kind of a divide happening between the industry and the tie-up and all of that. But if you really see behind the scene, it's all about the same set of technologies that goes. And for retailers and for users, it's about how do we bring the convenience to the customers. One last point is what we have seen, again, touching on voice and text, there are contexts when you want to use voice, and then there are contexts when you want to use text. And then sometimes they just don't work. So for example, if you're driving a car and want to stop something, you want to use voice because you can't text, right? Versus if you're in the store and you want to look up an item or a product, you may want to text because you can't type the whole barcode number on your, or you can't speak up the whole barcode number.
So you brought an interesting angle on how these things work. How do you see, or what challenges do you see that this can scale in the industry like retail industry or any other enterprise industries like Heena, and you can add some of your thoughts there?
Yeah, I will touch upon from the business side, and then we have people who can talk more technology. But the point is, as we already discussed, this is heavily laborious. But for these conversational technology to work, it needs a lot of data, right? We all know that. And the biggest problem in the industry today is the availability of good quality of data. Data which is standard, which has a defined taxonomy, which is labeled, which is of good quality, and so on, right? And the biggest problem in industrializing this technology is because this data varies from industry to industry. This varies from retailer to retailer. Nobody wants to share their data because data is the intellectual capital. Data is where the money is nowadays, right? And so everybody has to almost start from the scratch. Everybody has to start building as if like you're building from the scratch. And this is where the problem is, like the repeatability of such a solution is kind of very minuscule at this point. At some day, I'm hoping that it will become much more industrialized and then it will evolve much faster, but that's what it is today.
See, I think the power of this technology, right, it comes from that closed loop interaction between the user, the tech, the feedback, and then that whole motivation of the end user to engage with this technology more and more. There is this whole priming phase, right, when the technology which has come out of the lab is getting prepared for real world application and real world conversations. And so especially in the enterprise side of the world, what is happening is these companies are large organizations that are built on some structure, hierarchies. There are several different roles. People come together to get some job done. They are built for efficiencies. They are built where these efficiencies are scorecarded, and then people are incentivized for running the business in a certain way. So when we introduce conversational AI and AI technologies in general in large enterprises, there's this huge sort of entry barrier, if you will, because suddenly these structures which are built for efficiencies, you're introducing a tech where that priming phase becomes a big problem, where the humans need to invest enough in the tech to make it really valuable for the business process. And so what we've seen is we really need to go and do something about digital motivation, gamify, or create some incentive structure around this to make sure that we can actually create that adoption and create that motivation in the users to invest in the technology. And after that, the technology obviously takes off. There's this tipping point that we need to reach with the users. Because a lot of time in these enterprises, and think about the products that I'm talking at, CA Technologies, these products are where operational intelligence products are where, let's say, right from mainframes all the way to the distributed, you have this huge IT infrastructure, which is heterogeneous, and you have monitoring products, which are AI enabled, which are looking at all this infrastructure and engaging with the support teams and the services team to alarm them and to make sure that they focus on that part of the topology where there could be issues. Or they're engaging with technology for root cause analysis and remediation of issues. A typical, and we know the whole AI versus human, will all jobs go away, and all that discussion that keeps happening. So what happens is there is this straightforward resistance from the first level itself where people need to engage. So forget about priming and contributing to this technology. There's actually a huge barrier. So a lot of our effort goes in making sure that we remove that adoption barrier, that entry barrier, and we make sure that people are incentivized to improve this technology so that the technology then starts improving the lives of the user. So that's really the thing that is happening.
I have the next question, which is interesting again. You have Alexa, Cortana. When can I see a Deepika or Ravina coming in? Rajendra, what do you think? Is it a requirement?
Definitely. I think, the key part of any conversational technology is actually the persona that you assign to them, right? So when you speak about Alexa, right, you actually are also already imagine, what is the voice modulation that you are going to hear, right? So there is a persona assigned to them. Now, one of the part of, let us say, having a different culture, different languages, talking to somebody in a let us say, particular cultural context, right? For example, if you consider India as one of the country or probably one of the culture, and then if I'm going to talk to Alexa, it looks very, let us say, artificial, right? I can't able to connect to them, right? But I can very easily connect to Deepika, Aishwarya, or somebody, because I can relate to them, right? So there is a persona that you need to assign to them. So there are many parts to it, right? The first part is that the persona you can assign as a voice modulation. That is the most, let us say, perceptible sensing part that we can actually see. But if let us say it's avatar of Aishwarya talking to you, then you also would like to see the visual appearance part, right? Now, the second part actually are also about, the kind of, let us say, the quirkiness of a particular language, right? For example, if I speak in Hindi, I'm expecting some very, very specific, let us say, responses from even the bot, right? For example, I can say yes, but in Hindi I have to say ha, right? That is also supposed to be yes, right? So you also need to understand that when you do a kind of, let us say, language translation part, right, or you want to design a board that actually is a multilingual part, and it is very much required in Bangalore because almost everybody speaks minimum 5 languages here. So it should have a capability of understanding, let us say, the questions in multilingual, and it should be able to understand that actually it can reply into multilingual form, right? We happen to speak most of the time into bilingual, right? We call English, right? So if I really want to attach a bot in a more personalized way, then I would expect that the way I speak to them, they also should speak to me in the same language, right? And that is where you kind of build the bond and trust and so on and so forth. So definitely we need to have all this, what you call as the multilingual translation features inbuilt into it. And you can actually train them for some time, but most of the time they have to actually evolve to learn themselves from the the way conversation is happening. And I think my panelist actually mentioned earlier that you need to have conversation for pretty long period of time to actually learn all the quirkiness of, let us say, to impart the same learning to the bot.
So Nikhil, you want to add
Yeah.
how the technology is going to bring up
First,
that?
I would prefer Deepika over Ravina to talk to. But anyhow, I think the systems today, as we're talking about, it's data which is a critical factor, right? And I completely believe that 2019 we will have systems, be it Alexa, be it Cortana or something, which will be able to have some level of, vernacular content communication going in, right? Because it's the technology is there. It's not that we are, we have to solve a new problem. It's like we know how to solve the problem. Let's get the data. Let's make it cost effective to train these models and then work with the system. So that's one part of the equation. The other part of the equation is that even in the same language, how much can we handle today, right? As we're talking about, it's rule-based system. So we were working on this, a conversation system on a detail page on Amazon, and where consumers can come and ask questions about a product, right? And so we envisioned, it was a camera, and people will ask, okay, can it record? It's a visual thing. So we plan for those, but a question comes in, can it record while charging? So what do we do about that? These kind of modifiers. Or some guy comes and says, can you give it for free? We never anticipated that kind of a question. He's saying, can you give it for free because I'll take this, I'll make a video out of it and put on YouTube. I'll give good reviews. So these are the kind of questions. I think step one is to just make it, in a different language. Step two is to advance from a basic, simple conversation to the next level. And I think coming next year, we will see developments in regionalization in these kind of products.
And just quick, one more point, right? So other than the language part, I think it's also, and the personality part, it's also important to understand what is this an agent for, right? For example, we project Cortana as a productivity assistant, right? Your intelligent assistant. And then, of course, Alexa, Amazon wants to sell stuff on Amazon, right? So retail buy stuff is her main USP among music and other things, right? And then Google probably search is their thing. So I don't think we can peanut butter saying that, hey, let's build a personality that does everything. It's really important to scope the problem, because let's be clear, right? We are not there yet with the tech. We are getting there. We will do really well if we pick a niche and double down on that. But the Roo kind of scenarios, like I talked about, which she can talk about anything, I don't see why an enterprise would want a Roo, right? If a customer service bot, you get your answer and get out of my bandwidth and help me save my network, right? I don't want you to chat with you unnecessarily and get other people not having their question answered. So it's really a scenario-based thing, and that comes into the personality and the language support and everything else.
So we are all talking about the humanizing the bots, right? So there's a lot of nuances that has to be put into there. It has to be having the feeling of a human. It should see the behavioral aspect of it, and how a person is talking to it. And based on that, if you say like, I'm bored, play me a particular movie or anything, there's a lot of context in there. How challenging is to build these context models, and how can these conversational AIs get there?
So I'll just break down that in terms of how the stack works, right? So let's consider, it need not be a voice bot, it could be a chat bot, but let's assume that it's a voice-enabled bot. So the first step is the speech recognition part, the speech to text conversion part, because that's the first step. And there we have gotten really good. For example, I think a couple of years back, Microsoft actually announced human parity at transcribing, at listening to voice, speech and converting it to text. So we have gotten really good at it, and we are expanding languages there. The second part is the intent understanding, and to be fair, that is the tough job here, because you are expecting a machine to learn how a human would understand a sentence, and that is definitely non-trivial, because there are, like the Nikhil pointed out, there's so many ways to ask the same question. So there's no way you can just write a rule-based system. So it has to be a learning-based system, and the tools we have both from Microsoft, the cognitive services and the Poly and the Lex stuff, they're actually pretty toyish in my opinion. They get you here, but they'll not get you to like within the human parity range. So the intent understanding is the challenge. The next challenge is the language generation, right? Like I said, right, for Roo, we have an army of editors who write script. But the real rocket science comes in when the system can actually generate a sentence of its own.
which is grammatically correct and in context and makes sense. So we have tech, and we, like you were saying, right? We need data to do this. So we have Twitter data, we have Reddit data. There are a lot of open data sets that we have. And then with the vocabulary and stuff like that, there are systems that actually can form a language. But is it the great sentence? No. It's still, you can kind of make out that this is something very lame. I mean, it's not there yet. But is it grammatically correct? Yes. Is it in context? Yes. But not something that I would really like to talk to, right? So that's where the language generation part is at this point. And then the final step is the speech part of it. How do you convert that sentence back into speech? I think there we have gotten really well with the, you've seen how Alexa's quality is, right? The Indian, the accent and the dialect, and even Google's, they're really sophisticated systems. So I think the heart of the system, where you understand context, intent, and figure out what to say, doing that on its own is still work in progress. We are making steps, and I agree with Nikhil. I think in the next few years you will see massive advancement. You must have seen the Google duplex demo, right? And like mind-blowing things. So there are advances happening. Research is ongoing, and I think we will get closer. But again, we are not getting to Skynet anytime soon. We are still at very rudimentary steps at this point.
So I have this last bit of point which I wanted to cover was how is this technology going to be safeguarded? As you said, like, can we get into a Terminator or a Skynet? Or how this technology can influence the human minds? Can it psychologically break down somebody, or will it really change their thought process? What needs to be done from the compliance part and those part of this thing? So anybody can pick up this part.
I'll take a quick stab. So, good point, right? And we've heard examples. I'll not name it because it was Microsoft's, but we have seen examples before where things have gone wrong. So I think the learning from that is that these systems that we build to learn, they can be, you can safeguard on what it learns, right? It's need not that you just open it up to any human conversation and it learns from that. So I think one lesson that we have learned is make sure that the system learns what you want it to learn and not any random stuff that comes in. It's not very hard to do. It's easy to put checks on how the system is learning, right? And the other part about privacy compliance, that's I think a bigger thing. For example, I don't know if Alexa is listening to whatever I'm saying right now and where that data is going, right? So that's a concern, and you must have seen the European Union data privacy rules and all these things coming in. People are now more aware. I don't know if they really still care that much. We were having a conversation earlier. So the whole Cambridge Analytica thing happened, but Facebook wasn't really impacted much. People are back using Facebook like they used to. So I don't know if people are really, really concerned about it, but I think they're at least more aware. And such regulations will sort of evolve over time and make sure that the right things are taken care of.
By the way, Alexa is listening. Say Alexa once more time, this will wake up.
No, I realized when you were accusing Alexa, Alexa did not respond. It's smart enough to figure out when to listen and when to not.
Okay, guys, we've come to the end of this session today. I hope I can take one question. Yeah, please.
So in the context of the topic we are discussing today, if you remember earlier in this year, Sundar Pichai from Google did an all hands in Jan, where he actually live demoed kind of a bot talking to a hairdresser, making an appointment where the other person was a live human and the person had no knowledge that he or she was talking to a bot. So that's a significant advancement, right, in the humanizing AI world, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what it's a mind-blowing demo, right? The duplex demo is really mind-blowing. So, like I said, even systems like Roo and stuff, they are getting there, where they are now speaking more like humans. But where is it useful is still open. Like, for example, the hairdresser thing is probably a use case. Not the best use case, but definitely a use case. But yeah, we are getting there. Like, the research is on how to understand human emotion, how to understand sarcasm, right? I mean, how to understand the nuances of what a sentence means. So there's work going on, and we'll keep getting better and better at that.
that Google kind of products and even other products are very effective in a limited domain, right? If you think about the amount of variety our conversations can contain, right? It's humongous, and nobody is able to crack that, right? So that's where the balance is. Do we use machine learning to solve it at scale? Can we get to that level? Or we have more rule-based systems. So the Google duplex system, what you're talking about, can solve only a limited set of problems. But what was interesting is that they added the human touch, which was, till that point, not very, very effective for conversation systems.
Yeah, so just to build on top of that, right? So even the Google duplex demo, if you see, right, that is still a goal-oriented chatbot in the sense that the purpose of that bot was actually to book an appointment with the hairdresser, right? So there was a goal that was given to the bot, and basically the way to achieve that goal actually was left to the bot, right? And what basically it happened is that it was trained to do that particular conversation to achieve the goal, right? What actually we are telling is that that is just the first step of about, let us say, full-fledged conversational bot, where actually a bot actually can actually just have a general conversation with you for, without any scope or without any goal, right? So what actually you see is that when you go just beyond the goal-oriented bot systems to a slightly general conversation bot, that is where basically they get confused, or they suddenly you start seeing their limitations part. And what you are going to see is that gradually it is going to expand. It can actually only do one goal, but actually you can give him multiple goals, and that particular bot actually should be able to handle that. And that is how probably the generalization could happen.
Okay,
Thanks.
Just to add to this and adding the industry flavor to the same, I completely agree. Because that test was more of a test, and it was more of proving that it's possibility, right? The art of possible. But if think about industrializing that, is it possible? Can actually everybody start using it today, which is possibly not possible, right? Because you are like it's like a demo car. You built a car and you're demoing it in the car show today, auto car show, and it may industrialize like, let's say, a couple of years later. This personalized AI conversation could be like maybe a year later or maybe 2 years, who knows? But then it's not a reality today. And then the biggest problem is industrializing by domain for a business, like for insurance business versus retail versus healthcare versus financial. You need to have that much of different knowledge and kind of models to build separately.
That's true.
Thank you all panelists. What I can summarize is that this is a game changer technology. There's definitely a lot of expectations that is happening in this area. There's a lot of startup funds which is there. Amazon is investing $100 million, and people can easily use those funds. And in the next few years, there's going to be a lot of churn, and definitely we'll be industrializing and scaling it up to the expectations that the industry wants. Thank you all.
Thank you, panelists.